There is an age-old lie that is pushed by the quote-unquote ghetto culture that states the following. I had no choice but to become a fill in the blank. And usually that blank is I had no choice but to become a dope boy or a drug dealer. I had no choice but to become a jacker or a robber. I had no choice but to commit the crimes. And so when I came across this short clip that I'm about to show y'all right now, it shows you that this idea has made its way back into the mainstream conscious. It's made its way to the next generation. Back in the day, we used to hear this, and unfortunately, we are still hearing it now. So without further ado, let's get into it.
We need to talk about how the only options after high school is trapping, scam, rob, steal, finesse, FL Studio. Like, it ain't too much to really do no more. I feel like the older generation messed it up.
Yeah. So according to this young man, I'm sure he's a fine young gentleman, there is no choice for a young boy, a young man, a young black boy, more likely than not, than for him to become a criminal. Simple as that. The only reason that people become criminals is because they have no choice. Now, I used to be one of these individuals who believed in the propaganda that crime was directly related to quote unquote poverty, right? The wealth in an area would determine whether or not there would be more crime or less crime. And on the surface, that looks to be the truth. But when you get to travel the country or even the world abroad and you get to see people living in what we would call poverty, and you realize that not everybody is basically a jackaboy, a criminal of some sorts just because they're living in poverty, right? I have not been to the rural areas in China, but I have been in Zimbabwe. I have been, in places overseas in Europe, etc. And what I've come to realize is that you can have people living in these rural areas, living in poverty. I mean, even in the States, small town living. I lived in a small town for at least a year. And what I got to see there was these people are poor, but the crime rates are not necessarily the same as you would in other places. And then you could go to a place like San Francisco, which is per capita one of the most prosperous financial places. And yet there is almost a free reign of criminality. Now, of course, we can get into politics and, democratic politics specifically. But the point is this. That lie is exactly what enables this type of guy right here to feel justified in becoming a criminal. I had no choice. I had no choice but to steal. I had no choice but to become a dope boy. And mind you, this is coming from somebody from the age of 15 to around 19, almost 20 years old. I was a D-boy. I ended up linking up with some guys who happened to be in the trade, and I found myself in the exact same thing. I became what the people around me were. And guess what? I chose. Did I have to be a dope boy? Absolutely not. Could I have gotten a job at 16, 17 years old? Absolutely yes. Did I choose to do so? No. Instead, I made the excuse of I need money. I want money. I didn't necessarily need that money, right? My basic needs were taken care of. Roof over my head, food in my belly. But even if that wasn't the case, would I be forced to be a criminal? Do you have no choice in becoming a criminal? Now, I don't know if this video right here is satire or not. My assumption is that it is not, because I've heard this throughout my entire life. And I've heard this, in conversations prior, before I was even born, in the 80s, the 70s, and the 60s. The reason why there is rampant criminality within these urban areas is because they have no choice. The young black man has no opportunity in America today. They have been espousing this nonsense for foreverdom. And it is exactly that same sentiment that keeps the very same criminal element alive. If it was made to be taboo like it was, let's say, in the 50s, 40s, 30s, 20s, right, in the 10s, and then getting back into the 1800s. I mean, criminality was not this accepted during slavery within the said black community, within Jim Crow. And yet here we find ourselves on the other side where it is not only rampant, but it is made okay. And some people want to blame Reaganomics. They want to blame the CIA for putting drugs into the black community. And, oh, that's the reason they became drug dealers. No. I think it was Frank Zanu. Shout out to whoever put me on to this man. He is an African American in the truest sense, right? Born in Africa and spent much of his later years in America. And he was speaking on how, if most other communities would have had the same, let's say, CIA infiltration, right? There was dope that was dropped off in the neighborhoods. There were weapons dropped off in the neighborhood. Would it be the exact same circumstance? Would it be the same outcome? And the reality is, no. If you were to put those into a Chinese neighborhood or a Jewish neighborhood, would you get the same outcomes? The likelihood is not. And it's not because black people are just predisposed to violence. At least I would never want to think that, right? That's not the ideology and the place that I come from, but I believe it's a sentiment. It is the cultural accepted, the customs of these people, right? What is made okay and what is not. So when you have a welfare system that's already been running for the last 20 years, when you have, the disincentivization of men in the household after the Great Society, 1965, Lyndon Baines Johnson, after you have the priming of such an environment, that it makes it much easier for these same individuals to just be given over. Once you've lost your morality, you have lost God in the household, right? Or in the greater society. You see what happens as a byproduct of that. These are the facts. I know it's much easier to say the reason why these people are doing the things that they're doing is because of somebody else. But the reality is every young boy who is in a gang, who is, committing crimes, every young woman who's in the same activities I chose to be a dope boy. I did. I chose to indulge myself. I chose to be on the dope and to sell the dope. Nobody else made that choice for me. I had homeboys who came from, more dire situations than those who came from good ones. And guess what? They were in the very same activities. They were doing the exact same thing. This one had his mama taking care of every want and need. Not just need, every want. The shoes, new this. Okay, got it. Still became a dope boy. We were influencing each other because we wanted to fit in. We wanted to be cool. And to be honest, it was what was culturally not just accessible, but it was the cultural. It was the highest honor. I can put it that way. Right. And I've made this point before and I'll make it 1,000 times if I need to. But, it's a culture that oftentimes celebrates the criminal getting out of prison more than, the graduate who just made it to the next level of life. Like you'll have the ceremony that's basically put together for the criminal who left, at least in the household and within the community. How do I know this? Big Meech gets out of prison, a man who was known for being one of the most prolific criminals in the black black community. And this man is worshiped, praised. They're having parties for him. They're having concerts and this and that. And then you have the young man who just became a lawyer, not the one acting a damn fool, right? Shucking and jiving up there. I'm talking about the one who worked his ass off, merit-based, got to a certain place where he is now going to be stepping into, that occupation that most people around him would never even fathom. And yet he might be hated on. He might be called lame for the decisions that he's made. That's the difference here. Is crime a choice? I am a firm believer that yes, it is. You are choosing whether or not you're going to partake in a certain behavior. And it's always blaming on the last generation. The last generation didn't do this, therefore I have to become a criminal, I have to scam. Huh? Make it make sense. The last generations actually set us up for greater success. If we're to be honest, I'm not saying your mama exactly, your daddy exactly, but it's like the tech of today, the technology of today exists because of yesterday, the people of yesterday. So it's like the millennials did something. And then before them, you had, the boomers, Gen Xers, like there was innovation up until this point. And I'm afraid that we've gotten to a place where it's like there's become disproportionately this victim mentality that we've taken upon ourselves. And, A lot of people don't want to build. They don't want to work. They don't want to be productive. And I get that, yes, we're questioning things for the first time, questioning the systems around us, etc. But you can never forego the element of, well, first of all, personal accountability, and then second of all, productivity. That's what built what we now enjoy. So yeah, you got a choice. You've got a choice. We need to dead this conversation altogether. And the intellectuals, quote unquote intellectuals who push this idea, they are doing more damage than they're doing good. Right? They claim that they're standing up for, the people of color's rights, and they're standing up for the plight of the black man, etc. But all they're really doing is keeping these very same people that they claim to help in the very same place. The only freedom comes from taking personal responsibility. If you were a dope boy, you were a criminal, whatever it is, change your life. That's a choice. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Now, if you'd like to stay around, make sure to click that little subscribe button down there, or you can show some love by going to the description below and clicking on the button titled Buy Me a Coffee. Leave a little something there, or click on the Cash App. Leave a little something here. Till the next time, peace.
I fell in love with the sunshine. I fell in love with the light. I fell in love with the full moon. I fell in love with the night. I can see the light again. I can see the light. You can see the life in him illuminate the night. I know the time is taking a 3, 6, 5, that's a full rotation. I see you looking up, you know them constellations. Constantly gazing like house of praises, you get to praising.